Right. Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Acknowledging Our Elders. My name is Nathan Hunter, and I'm with the Bronx River Alliance in New York City Parks. And I'm excited to be with Journey, Bimwala.
Hey guys, welcome back. We love having you guys here and seeing you guys every Thursday, right? So, yes, my name is Johnny Bimala. I am co chair of the Foodway team, part of Concrete Friends. And yeah, so we're here. I'm also a clinical herbalist, and we are here to present you guys with another wonderful plant, right?
Yes. And Jennifer's with us, Jennifer Seda from the Bronx River Alliance, community activist. Jennifer, you want to introduce yourself and share with us what plant you are talking about today?
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. I'm the volunteer program assistant at the Bronx River Alliance. My name is Jennifer Seda. I'm also co-founder of the Anti-Litter Project, and then I'm a member at Schaumburg Arts Community Garden and other community gardens. So I'm like heavily entrenched in the Bronx and what happens here, especially in the environment. And I'll be introducing and talking about knotweed today and about like what it means to me and what it represents. And so excited to be here. So a little bit of seasonal conservation crew last year. And I applied to be a volunteer program assistant. I got it. And when I first got into position, I went up to Nathan and I was like, how can I get on acknowledging your elders? And so we've been talking about this for a little while. So yeah, I've been watching the show and I just love when people share their stories and I'm excited to share mine.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, for bringing Japanese knotweed into the room. Today's botanical name, Reynoutria japonica. Reynoutria japonica.
I'm glad you said it and not me because I would have.
I know this feels intimidating, but it does kind of reflect its original name, Japanese. So Reynoutria japonica.
So true.
And I just wanted to acknowledge that this plant is part of the Polygonaceae plant, which is the buckwheat family. So this whole family looks like bamboo. That's kind of like one of the big ways we identify it. But Jennifer, how do you ID the plant? You've shared with us so many great photos for us to all see today.
Yeah, so I really identify it by, especially in the springtime right now, the shoots are coming up. So the leaves are like purple right now. It's a really beautiful plant right now. It has a little bit of pink, hot pink. It has a little bit of green. Knotweed will usually be next to dormant knotweed. So you'll probably see big dormant knotweed and little sprouts of knotweed coming up. When they grow bigger, they look like bamboo, but they're not. They have bigger leaves than bamboo. As Nathan has said too, it's in the buckwheat family. Bamboo's not in the buckwheat family. Bamboo's a little bit more woodier than knotweed. Knotweed is easy to break and it's more wetter. And we'll talk about like the benefits of it being wet so you can kind of cook with it. And it's also has some medical properties. I know Journey was telling me about that earlier in the root. But yeah, it spreads. It has like an extensive root system. It has rhizomes. And then when it blooms, it has these beautiful flowers that pollinators love. And then, yeah, on the left side of the screen, that's what it will look like. It will look like green and pink stems and then big kind of like heart-like leaves.
And I love how you shared an image of yourself with the knotweed over the season. This is you out in one of the parks along the Bronx River, right?
Yeah, that's Bronx Park Rosewood playground.
It's just massive. Do you remember what time of year this was, this photo?
I think it was September.
Okay, so this is end of season. It will get, how tall are you, Jennifer?
I'm 5'2".
Okay. That plant is huge. That's like 6-7 feet.
6-7 feet of this knotweed.
Incredible. And you mentioned, you've been connecting with the plant along the river, and wanted to kind of just highlight, what you're up to and talk about even the middle photo and why you shared that with us.
Yeah, so when I think of knotweed, I honestly think of last summer, like summer of 2021, being a seasonal conservation crew apprentice and like being out on the river, picking up trash, just planting not native plants, but a lot of our time was like weeding, you know, uprooting invasive species. And most of that time was spent with knotweed because what I've learned about knotweed too, it loves water and it loves water, so it's going to be along the river, and it loves places that don't drain well, so just anywhere that's wet. So that's why, like on the right picture, this was by the Cross Bronx. I used to live on 174th and Concourse. I was walking home and I saw knotweed coming out of this essentially the Cross Bronx, so it must not drain well. So a lot of roadways hold water and don't drain well, so you might see knotweed along there. But yeah, so we would just, a lot of times we would be shoveling in the soil, trying to uproot the knotweed and replanting native shrubs, like service berries or like redwoods and Bronx Park or different parts of the river. And I remember taking one home to be a house plant, and everyone at the Bronx River Alliance, because they kept it in the locker room, were like, what are you doing? This is like the most invasive species ever. I was really intrigued by it. It was really beautiful. I mean, it came here because it was beautiful. Unfortunately, that's why it's an That's why it's an invasive species. It came here from Asia. And it's really pretty, that's why. But yeah, so the only real way you can get rid of knotweed, we don't want knotweed along the river, it's just not favorable. It has a long, root system. It's just not native. We want to plant native things. We want to restore the Bronx River back to its natural habitat. So the only way to get rid of knotweed, because it will grow through concrete, is to spray with herbicides. So the picture in the middle is when the conservation crew basically partnered up with parks, specifically a guy named Adam. He specializes in herbicides, I think pesticides, everything aside, he specializes in. So before we went out and sprayed, we got basically a training from him of like what they are, what they do, and just how to properly do it. So even before that, we had to cut the knotweed waist high. And then the day of, we had to spray them so it could get into the root system through the stem. And essentially, I wish I had a picture up here, but the next season, so knotweed will still grow, but it will be mutated and it'll be a really small batch, really small dandelion type thing, really small, instead of a big shrub like knotweed. So yeah. That's my little story behind knotweed.
And I think I really appreciate that you bring up this like conversation around herbicides, because I know I'm a gardener. I also work for parks, and I like struggle with that boundary between how do we control a plant that is so aggressive that it's literally just taking out our native populations.
Yeah.
I like to think of it like the colonizer versus the native kind of, to understand what's going on to a degree, because what we're trying to do is just protect the native species that are there, but they're quite literally displacing them through those wild rhizomatic roots that we saw in the first one. It just builds dense patches, and once you cut them, it encourages more growth. It's wild. So I think this is really important conversation to be having, and I think that leads us to like the brighter side of this conversation, which is like, Journey was uplifting before some of these medicinal ways to be connecting with Japanese knotweed, but you introduced, ways that you can be harvesting plants, and you showed us this paper too. So I would love to talk about all the positives.
The ways you use knotweed, right? The positives of it. So being like leader of the Ancillary Project, and even when I think back on my life, like my mom, was always sustainable. Like she would use a Ziploc bag and then wash it. So I feel like I've kind of had that ingrained in my life, like reuse jars and stuff. But just getting older and being more conscious of who I am, I'm like, let's use what we already have, right? Or what are we throwing in the trash? How can we repurpose it? And I watch a lot of like videos, and I was watching one about bamboo and mulberries. This company in Asia makes toilet paper out of it. And I was like, knotweed is so similar to bamboo. I wonder if there's any knotweed paper out there, and there is. So I think this company is in Europe or Asia, the company Knotweed Paper. But yeah, you can also use it as food. I've seen people have farms or have land that has just been infested with knotweed and use it for pollinators and then harvest, you know, the honey. There's so many different ways you can use knotweed besides throwing it out. I mean, maybe you can put it in your compost. I recommend don't putting any of the seeds or any of the root, but like there's other ways you could use it besides throwing it out.
Yeah, I would probably warn against compost just because it can root really easily, but I love the idea of like cooking it. I heard people compare this plant to rhubarb in the way that you would process it for a pie or even to cook it. So that center image is a Japanese knotweed strawberry pie that looks super, super delicious.
Yeah, it does. And just like rhubarb too, I think you can put it in liquids and you can get like that pinkish tint from it. There's a lot of uses for it.
Journey, you were sharing with us earlier about how the plant has been used for like Lyme's disease, which I'm like, you know, I'm from Connecticut originally, and I think of Lyme's disease and all the hate we get you know, and just to know that there's a cure, I'm like, or at least that there's a plant out there that can support those that are suffering from Lyme's disease.
Oh yeah, absolutely. See, with the Japanese knotweed, and like as Jennifer was mentioning about where it grows, right along the river, the type of places it grows, there's a lot of things happening there, right? And you'll see that a lot. And area also where there's a lot of ticks, you might also encounter a lot of Japanese knotweed. And the root of the Japanese knotweed, like there's a piece of the root right there where you see that it's orange, but when it is cut, it has a bull's eye in it. It has a bull's eye, which is also an indication, because sometimes in herbalism, we can look at a plant, right? The way it looks, certain form might give you an indication of what that plant might be good for. So with the bull's eye that's in the root, when you cut the root and you see it, it reminds of the tick, right? Because remember the tick, the head, the way it kind of largen in. And Japanese knotweed's medicine that's in the root is really good for deep infection. Deep infection, especially infection having to do with ticks. So using the roots to make medicine, when you have tick infection or anything having to do with tick, it's really, really, really good. It is one of the herbs. It's so funny to me that it is in one way it is vilified, right? But then in another way, it is one of the herbs that's been extensively researched. All right, been extensively researched, and a lot of the research has been in vitro with animal studies with a lot of success. So it does have many, many great uses. It's just that here in the Western, we don't we don't use it the way that in the East, right? In Asia, the way they use it, because in Asia it plays a really big role over there, and not as much over here because we don't know much about it, and for us, it's more of a nuisance than a helping hand. But then when you look at again, tick situation and other infection that we might endure, Japanese knotweed, comes into play when it comes to that. But I love the roots because the color of it. I found it fun to dig. It's a lot of work to dig it, and I like digging it around the springtime because young roots, everything is just easier than later on. It can get really tough. It has a lot of vitamin A, vitamin C, a lot of resveratrol. So it's a really great plant. I haven't eaten it yet, but now that Jennifer brought it up and mentioning all of this stuff, I'm definitely gonna get me some shoots, some early shoot, and maybe do like a brine with it. Do a brine. I'm gonna try different things and see how I like it, because you can cook it for something more of a savory type of dish, right? Or you can include it with sweets, like tart, pies, type of stuff. But yeah, I'm definitely wanna try it out to eat it for the first time, since that's not that is not one of the food that I eat, but I have used the medicine for it. So, and I like it. That is really one of my great plant that I have. And the good thing about it too is like once you make a tincture with it, but which I'll definitely recommend knowing and understanding the plant, right? Because Japanese knotweed, just like the other plant we talked about, poke root, right? Those are very, very powerful plants. So it's not just for anybody to just start messing with the roots and, and just start taking it or willy-nilly. You really do need to know the plant and understand it a whole lot better to know how to properly use it, because again, if you don't use it right, you may not like the effect of it, but if you use it the way it is meant to be used, it's an amazing elder in terms of healing.
Yeah, and I want to just uplift again, Jennifer. I'm not sure if you mentioned this on camera or in our previous conversation, but the idea of like soil testing and wanting to know where you're harvesting your plants. This is a famous one for growing in very polluted areas. At least my relationship with it is more of a plant that takes over brownfields and takes over sites that have been historically polluted. You'll often see them on the side of the road, busting through the sidewalks, like really in kind of the margins of the landscape, where they're strong enough to compete against the barriers. But in those areas, that's where like hydrocarbons, oil, gets collected, and that's where lead and other toxins exist. So we are offering free soil testing. I'll just put that out there here at the Alliance. So if you're interested in dropping off a soil sample because you want to forage in a location or something like that, we encourage you to test the soil before. It's another way to make sure you're safe. So I just want to uplift that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely doing the soil testing. Really great thing that Jennifer did bring up.
I was just saying that's a journey. I was like, I got into foraging like last year, but I was too scared to like I would look at things and be like, I wonder what this is, but to eat it, I was like, no, I want to take it home. I want to like make it a house plant. I'm not too comfortable to eat it yet because it's out in the public and it's like public parks, not sure. And we're cleaning up this site, right? It can't be that clean. So with like the soil testing, that can help me, like forage a little bit more safer, because it's definitely something that has become a part of me, like foraging and seeing what naturally grows and when it grows and what it looks like and how to harvest it. Thank you for that plug, Nathan.
I just want to add this part right here, and this is like for all of us, especially any one of us that's starting foraging or have been foraging, and we're taking part in the soil testing, right, just to figure out what's in the soil, right? What I've said to that is like, okay, do that, right? But I also would like you guys to take it a step further and compare that with um what with the fruits and vegetables that you normally get, right? Because you can also get those tests to see what's in them and compare the two. And you might be surprised, because sometimes what I've found is that there are some items where out in nature, right? What FDA allowed is actually lower in nature than in the fruits and vegetables that we actually purchase. And I really want people to kind of do that extra step so they can kind of compare and see, because sometimes with when we step outside, which is a new norm for a lot of people now, there is this fear, which is understandable, right? Of like, wait a minute, it's outside, is it polluted, is it good to eat, but there's all of this question, which is good, but we also want to make sure that and we compare the two, so we have a really good, clear idea, so that we know, okay, how far of a difference is it really between the two? You know what I mean? I find it funny and fun to look into.
To compare, yeah, because you're right. Like we could soil test on, the products whatever we find in the field, but like, what are we eating? What are we already eating? What does that look like? How are they similar? How are they different?
Yeah.
To
Because I've encountered a lot of people that would be afraid and they'd be like, well, you're not afraid of the air. There's chemical in the air, which is true, right? There's chemical in the air. But think about it. When you're growing your garden in your yard, front yard or backyard, it's the same air, right?
Mhm.
So at that point, you're not really thinking about, wait a minute, the air in my backyard might contaminate the plants that I'm growing. We don't necessarily think like that, but we start to get a lot more of those type of thoughts when we start to engage with nature. It's like, wait a minute, what about the air? What about this? So to kind of like look at it the same way as everything else, right? In the farms, things grow outside. Your garden grows outside. When you go to the park or the forest or even the foodway, right? Again, it's still outside. So we all are sharing the same air. So I'm just putting it out there to kind of to help people understand the nuances between the two, and that they're really not that far apart from each other.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction, and also just like to a full circle moment where we love to like I think about this with like organic food, right? Like we have to remember why organic food became a thing, because we were aware that our food was laced with pesticides and with herbicides, and like we wanted a system where we could isolate those vegetables to make sure that they're clean of those things, right? There's like standards that are placed on them. So yeah, I appreciate that conversation, because often we choose like, oh, well, I'm just gonna have a bag of potato chips because it's too hard to figure out which vegetable I should be selecting. Like I had a conversation with someone about that, and I was like, wow, I guess that's like sometimes that feels like an easier decision for folks. But when it comes to foraging too, it's like, yeah, we could be concerned about these things, but the best thing is to like find a little information, know where your food is coming from. And then once you understand where your food's coming from and you have those safe, clean ways of accessing those foods, just support those pathways. So I think about like farmers markets, like support your farmers markets, support, like spaces like the Foodway where we're testing soil and making sure that we're cultivating a space where we know the soil is clean for us, right? Support our local community gardens, right? Like these are spaces we can build to be safe for the long term, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Be safe, and I just taste better. The plants just taste like I've never had a better fruit in the supermarket than I've grown myself or cook myself. Yeah.
So true.
I like that too, because then, right, the more we engage in that way with the farmers market, right, with the Foodway, testing out the soil wherever we go foraging at, right? We are literally now engaging with nature. We're engaging with the plants around us, which kind of brings us into being steward of the land, steward of what's around us, and making sure that those areas are properly taken care of. If you found a part where it's like, hey, it's highly contaminated, then let's bring attention to that area and fix the soil. You know what I mean? So there's that extra layer of engagement that comes into play, and now it forms a really good relationship, like all around.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, I feel like we've shared it quite a bit. I'm wondering if there's any like last ways we want to like round out this conversation, or any final ways we want people to be connecting with this plant before we sign out for the day.
Yeah, I am very inspired to tell my story. I am just so intrigued by Morgan Powell. I just want to bring him into this and how powerful it is for people from the Bronx to tell our story, no matter what it is. And I've been holding on to this book for a while. It's called Wild Things, Wild Places, Adventurous Tales of Wildlife and Conservation on Planet Earth. And I just wanted to read like a little just a little paragraph from it to just explain like kind of what knotweed means to me. And yeah, so I just want to read that really quick, and then we can talk about it if you want. Okay, so it says scientists know what is happening, but their science is often rejected and they cannot make their voices heard. They are like the prophets in the wilderness. They have written thousands of books and papers. I have only read a fraction, but I have traveled with some of them and I have listened as they recounted the wonders and the horrors of their journeys. I've also listened to the wildlife photographers who are documenting this precious time in our planet's history through their artistry. These men and women are my heroes, as are people, everyone who speaks up for the natural world. This is a book for the protectors of our home, the earth, and for all the miraculous things living in it. And that just speaks so much to my journey. I've learned more from people and mentors than I have read in books. You can't read them all. And I've really found my calling for being one of the protectors and advocators for the natural world and whatever space I, take up. And that just came to my mind that, this environmental is like so loud in our heads, and like we know what steps to take is just hard. No one really listens, only few people listen. And that's what I got from that. And I wanted to read that and exit with that.
Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that. I really appreciate you, taking time to consider, your journey in the context of this conversation, and also, sharing where you're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up knotweed, because that is one of the plants, one of the early plants that I've engaged with. And there's a lesson that I gained from Japanese knotweed too. And for me, because how earlier we was talking about how it shows up in those disturbed area by the water and, around the ticks and all of these type of things, it just kind of makes me think of, with life, right? You have a certain skill set, right, that is needed in a specific environment where something that what you have can counteract whatever that's there, and that you can be in that space and hold your ground in that space, even if your skill set may not be utilized the way you want it to be utilized. You know what I mean? There's a thing of patience. You have to be patient. Just like now, we are now learning about herbs and the wild plants and things like that, right? Words are spreading out. So at some point, those plants that have been holding ground, right, an area where they are almost invisible, will become visible and will be utilized the way they're meant to be utilized. So that's what I get from Japanese knotweed.
Wow. Yeah, that's for sharing that. That's like a great, like, not an anomaly, but a metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful, and I want to end on that note of just being patient when you're not seen, and to remember that the gifts are there, and just wait. They'll be tapped in. You'll be tapped in momentarily. And I also, I'm often doom and gloom in my head, especially with climate change, and that reminder of like being patient, and a reminder that we may be going through some loss right now and grieving that loss, but those that are here and present and may not be showing their skill sets, their moment to shine and to support the community is right around the corner. So just to hold tight as a community, and to not read a book by its cover necessarily, judge a book by its cover necessarily, right? Stay open-minded. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Jennifer, so much for joining us today, for acknowledging our elders and journey. As always, great to have you alongside for this journey. No pun intended. And we'll be coming back together next Thursday with Roderick Bell. He'll be introducing Native American tobacco. So we'll have a conversation about the tobacco plant.
Oh, dope.
Awesome, y'all. We'll see you next Thursday. Take care.